Alright, so I'm here in Cairo, Egypt, and I'm visiting a mushroom farm. They are growing oyster mushrooms, like a white oyster mushroom. And this is a little bit more of a warm weather strain because of the hot summers. And this farm is very like closed loop. They're trying to farm off of what they're producing. So one of the things they use is their own the silk farm waste. They'll take the berries that they feed the silkworms, and then the stems will get ground down. And I'll show you that process in a minute. And that's what they use when they have it. If not, they'll use straw. Right now they're using rice straw. So these are incubating. And it's just regular bags with the knot on the, or it looks like they use a string on the top. They poke some holes for air exchange, and then it goes over to fruiting. This is also the same room that they grow the silkworms in. So you see these funny looking trays here with the screens that they're not using for the mushrooms. The reason why is this is what the silkworms grow on. And then the poles, they put them in just for converting it to oyster mushrooms in the wintertime when they're not silk farming. And then over here is the fruiting side. So you can see they're getting, I'd probably say about £1 per block. What are they getting, half a kilo per block of mushrooms? Yeah. And then for misting, they're simply using some low pressure nozzles. How many kilos are they getting per block harvest?
It's a 4.5 kilo block,
yeah,
which he expects to harvest not less than 1 kilo, so that's 25%.
Okay, that's pretty good on straw, yeah. And here, this looks like the first flush on some blocks that are just coming in. And then, you know, the floor is always wet, so that helps with humidity, and they do have some circulation fans moving the air around. And then they have just big greenhouse fans over here, getting rid of all that CO2 buildup. Okay, so he's showing us how he has the humidification set up. So it's all off of a timer. There's just a dial timer, and then they're 12 volt or 120 volt or 240 volt. 240 volt little pumps with a little filter, little particle filter, so that the nozzles don't get clogged up. And then it looks just like 1/4 inch supply line going to a 1/2 inch, and then that. So it's probably only pushing what, 40 or 50 psi, because those fittings don't hold up very well. Do you know how much pressure it is? How many was it, kilo bars or whatever?
6 bars.
6 bars. That's a lot.
6 times 12.
Yeah, 12 times 6, 12 points or 14.7. That's a lot of pressure. But he also has a lot of heads on it, so the pump might be rated for that much, but he might not be pushing it. These look a lot like Elm A, or like white, was it white pearl, or right?
For us, the color of the mushroom makes more of a difference, more than the flavor, for that matter. So the whiter they are, the more we consider them better mushrooms. So it doesn't really matter how they taste or what they're going to do with them, because you're probably going to chop them up anyway. But if they're white, then they look like the European ones, like the common mushroom. So the market likes that. So blue oysters wouldn't do really well in this market because the color is not as appealing. Blue is scary. Blue is scary. Yeah, blue really? Is scary. Okay. Wow. Like maybe if you have something like a darker, creamier white, that would be okay. Lightish gray, that would be okay. But if anything like has full body color in it, that would just be scary. It's just a phobia of like being toxic or something. Yes, okay. All right. Interesting. That's a great cluster right there. So as you can see, it's not the most fine mist, but a lot of the particles are making it to the ground. So that's also getting evaporative cooling off of the ground, evaporative humidification off the ground.
and almost none of it is actually making it onto the mushrooms. Very little of it, only the slight bit of really fine drifting particles will make it onto the mushrooms. So it's not soaking the mushrooms at all. And these are very similar to what I used to use when I did straw. They're like the Dig products, DIG, makes nozzles like that. And then what this is, that is an anti-drip. It might be actually no, I think it's an anti-drip. It might be a speed or a flow controller too. But typically that's a valve that when the pressure stops, it'll hold the pressure in the lines. So that way this thing isn't just dripping the whole time that it's off and draining all of your supply lines. It's just a little check valve that needs a couple pounds of pressure to open up, and then when it loses the supply pressure, it'll seal off the valve. And that'll stop the calcification from building up on the nozzle, because what happens is if you have constant dripping, as it's dripping, it's also evaporating, and then you're going to have just calcium building up on that nozzle, and you're going to have a lot more maintenance. Okay, so here's where they do the shredding. This is a shredder that they have. And they're using, what are these, just like wild grasses? Rice straw, okay.
Straw, and the bark of the trees.
Okay, so they're growing berries out there, and the berry trees, those are what they're producing silkworms with, right? Is that how it's working? And the waste of that, the stems of that every year, they use that primarily when the season is right to shred it down and make the mushroom blocks. But when that's not in season, when they don't have that available, then they'll go ahead and import in straw, either wheat or rice straw, right? And they'll grow off of that. And then this is the shredder they have. So what is it? It's a little rotary shredder. It has a little wheel in there that spins around. There you go. Okay, and it just chops it. And it's ran off of a little, like 5 horsepower Briggs & Stratton looking 4-stroke engine. Chain drive or belt drive? It's a belt drive. You got a belt on there. Real simple design. So carbureted. With the brick on top, looks like they have it in a burlap sack.
He's saying that it's going to come up with the boil.
They're going to boil it, okay. Oh, hold on. So they're sterilizing this, not pasteurizing. They are actually sterilizing the straw.
Tries to make each unit as efficient as possible during the entire year, so he would start with doing worms during summer when it's warm, so he doesn't need to warm it up for them. Okay. And then during winter he uses the mushrooms, so he doesn't have to pay for air conditioning because, well, okay.
So rather than air conditioning down and paying all that money, well, they don't even have air conditioning here, do they?
No.
On this facility?
No.
They'll just use the insulative properties, what do they have, and let it get a little bit warmer for the silkworms, but I guess they like that warmer environment.
Exactly, yeah. And then in the winter, at night it gets cold.
Okay.
Cold, like 6 degrees or something like this.
Okay.
So he has that buffer of cold, just go into the concrete, and then over the day it will warm up with the sun, but that's why they have the insulation from the sun. Okay, cool. How warm can the silkworms handle? What's the highest temperature that they can handle? So 25 Celsius. Okay. Yeah. 80-ish relative humidity. Stay kind of cool and still cool. Okay. And with the mushrooms you couldn't do that because you'd be sucking out all the cold air. تمام. وده بتعمله خلال الموسم الصيفي.
خلال موسم الصيف الرطوبة برضه يعني زي ما قلت لك من 80 ل 90 ما تقلش عن كده.
And humidity has to be not less than 80 to 90.
Okay. So it's humid. So that's why it's the two environments kind of complement each other to where they both need to be humid, but the silkworms you don't need as much gas exchange, I'm guessing, right?
Yeah.
And they want to be a little bit cooler.
And they want to be a little bit cooler, and then for them it's really maximizing the space that they grow in.
Yeah.
So silkworms make silk, which is a high value product for those months, and then rather than having
when it gets too cold in the winter,
this just
gotcha.
Value.
Yeah, they use the waste of everything they grew all season to grow a product that's valuable.
Exactly.
Very cool. So this is their processing. They are taking the clusters and breaking them down into individual petals. Using a little shear, so he'll cut it with the shear, and they pack them, and they saran wrap them. And what is it, half kilo or?
ده بيبقى قوله حوالي الطبق بيبقى ربع كيلو.
No, that's like half a pound.
Half a pound, okay.
يعني ده مش كيلو، في
So
4
like a
كيلو بس
quarter
انا بشتغل
kilo.
بده.
Yeah, okay. And they get sold at local markets, or where do they go?
بنوديه برضه سوبر ماركت ومطاعم وحاجات زي كده.
توصيل في توصيل المنازل يعني.
Okay. Almost everything. Home delivery. They sell to restaurants.
Yes.
They sell to our equivalent of a farmer's market.
Okay, cool. Is that your little business card with your
Yes.
little label?
يس رقم التليفون النهارده 29.
هيقول لك جوده غبيه قوي.
يا استاذ خالد
لا يشيرها في مصر قبل ما يمشي.
Is 10 Egyptian pounds per 200 grams, or how much is it per? It's 100 grams.
الطبق ده بكام؟
الكيلو بيتباع ب 50.
فالطبق ده يتباع مثلا ب 12 ل 15. 15. 15 GB. We're talking about 90 cents.
90 cents for a little one packet.
For one packet.
Okay.
والتيكت ده يا استاذ خالد احنا عاملين له خاص بالرابطه بتاعتنا عشان خاطر الاستاذ سامح بيعرف اراء الناس بعد ما بتاكل المشروم. عجبك ولا ايه المشكله اللي قابلت حضرتك في الاكل؟ في وصفات معينه لو انت مش عارف انا بقول لك عليها، خلطات معينه عشان خاطر يطور المنتج بتاعه ويتكبر.
So the number he's adding to, or the business card he's adding is one of the managers for the farm.
Okay.
It's to gather feedback on taste and or help someone who doesn't know how to cook it or what kind of recipes they can use.
Okay. Cool. Ready for the market.
يس. ماركت وزهوم وكل حاجه. التيكت مكتوب عليه مدة الصلاحية يا استاذنا مدة 10 ايام زي ما احنا كده زي ما ماشيين، وبيفضل معاك 10 ايام يعني 7 ايام ل 10 ايام بس بيفضل 10 وشغال، وبرضه بيفضل اكتر من كده بس احنا بنكتب اللي هو الايه
ان هو يبقى اكتر حاجه طازه يعني او يفضل طازه وبعد كده هيبقى اقل فهيبقى الاختيار للمستهلك.
بس احنا حاطين اللي هو الاختيار الانسب ليه.
They write the day's date and that piece of paper says that it has a 10-day shelf life.
Okay.
They say it can go longer than 10 days, but it's best before 10 days. 10 days to make people have it when it's still fresh.
Yeah, I think past 2 weeks they kind of fall apart. They start growing out again. They get the mycelium growing out of the stems. Not so pretty looking anymore. And why do they do them gills up rather than gills down?
تمام. هو انتوا ليه بترصوا الخياشيم لفوق مش لتحت؟
عشان شكلها اجمل وهو ده الافضل له.
It makes it look more beautiful.
Okay.
So that makes it better for marketing.
Gotcha. Okay.
من وجهة نظرنا طبعا.
بالنسبه لوجهه نظره في حاجات عنده اللي هو الحاجات المشروم التاني اللي عنده بيبقى بطريقه العكس اللي هو الاجار الحاجات اللي هي الشيكن والاجار.
He's saying that this is kind of local to our market. They like it like this. If it's face up, that's when they expect like a common button mushroom.
Okay.
ده كده بالنسبه لطريقه
the other way around you're saying they face that. Okay. this shows that it's an oyster mushroom. It shows the gills are white, rather than black
or gray, or
yeah. Okay. Cool. Well, thank
طب
you.
كده بالنسبة للفوائد ده زي الفوائد اللي هي في السوق نفسها ولا بتختلف؟
One thing I wanted to add is that they were asking me what are some value added products, and I mentioned that they can make dehydrated mushroom powder and they can add that into salts or just sell it as a product itself. So right now they're throwing this out. We're not throwing it out, but they're feeding it to animals. Whereas that's a couple pounds of stems there. And one of the things I recommended is they can look into dehydrating them, powdering them, adding them to salts with seasoning, adding them to just packets of dehydrated mushroom powder or mushroom jerky. And so they're going to give that a shot, see if they can do that as well, or play with the idea. So here are the fields with the berries, and they're berry trees that are kept down to a bush. And that is what they'll use to feed the silkworms, from what I understand. And then when they trim them back, the stems are what they use for the mushrooms. They're also interplanting some garlic. He has some onions over there, some fava beans. Fava beans are very, culturally in the Egyptian culture, they use it for fool, which is their like bean stew. And it's a big part of their meal, part of their, what their intake is, you know. So very integrated farm, zero waste, you know, a lot of product getting turned into other composts and feeding other parts. And then also a big part of this is he's a model farm. He considers himself a model farm, to where he's trying to sell the idea and sell the concept. So he sells the worms, he sells the cuttings of this, and that's what a lot of these greenhouses on the right there are. It's about 150 feet of just propagating out the berry trees, and then he sells them to other farms, and he also sells the worms to other farms. So any of his excess becomes product. And here you can see all the cuttings. So he has these in plastic bags, little plastic potter bags. And then he also sells them bare root over here, where he just plants them in sandy soil. And then he'll strip off the dirt and sell them bare root, a little bit cheaper, but easier to produce like this. So I'm back in my hotel room now. Did a little bit of research. I couldn't put my name on the type of tree. So it's a mulberry plant, and they are basically coppicing it, where they're cutting it down to the roots almost every year. And that's what's in the field you saw in that last part. And then from there, they'll take the branches with the leaves on it. It's not so much the berries, but it's the leaves. So take a branch with all the leaves on it, probably some berries too, but they'll take that and lay it in bundles on those trays, the ones with the burlap bottoms, the screen bottoms. And then they order little eggs of a caterpillar, and that they'll eat through all the greenery. And then after all the greenery is eaten, the little fat caterpillars will build their little cocoons, and they spin out their own silk, and they do all of that on site too. They have a little kind of loom thing that unstrands the cocoon. A whole nother side of the operation is the vermicompost, and I didn't cover that in this video because there's a whole nother video I have to edit for that. It's probably going to be just as long as well. They have it's got to be an acre, maybe almost an acre, a half acre probably at least, of vermicomposting. And this is super low tech, and they're using all of the waste of the operation and then also bringing in some manures as well. And they're making high quality organic compost for local farmers or gardeners in the area. So yeah, hopefully you like this video. Some other stuff on my side, some updates, is I have classes now available on myersmushrooms.com. For the summertime, I'm only doing 2 classes this year. It was a little bit too much for me to handle with every month, so I kind of backed off the classes. Bag sales are kicking butt, so if you need bags, hit up myersmushrooms.com. If you like this video and you want to see more content like that, support me through patreon.com. I don't have, or even Amazon affiliates, I don't have my YouTube is not monetized. So if you like watching my videos, please contribute even $1 there a month or $1 there a video, whatever, however much you can spare. So yeah, make sure you give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't already, keep on mushrooming. Have a good one.